Hello, Tali Rabin here from Thermography Clinic, and I'm really excited to finally have a chance to have a brief but very powerful interview and conversation with a very, very long time and dear friend of mine, Riaz Aziz. Riaz and I go back many, many years back from our university days, and how the university would have it is that our careers are now in a position where they've somewhat crossed paths in some ways. And I'm so excited about that. And I'm going to have Riaz tell you some very, very important things regarding cancer, breast cancer prevention, and during and post. So without further ado, Riaz, I am so happy that you're here. Welcome today.
Thank you, Tal.
And I'd love for you to tell people what you do and why you do it.
So I'm basically a cancer recovery coach. And what that is I help people regain their health and find vitality after their cancer treatments. I have actually started working with people during, and that was a result of COVID, where people needed better advice, which is kind of the basis of our interview here today. Right. And how I got into this was I am a cancer survivor. I'm 16 years out. My mother got cancer, breast cancer, in 2011. Unfortunately, she passed in 2015, and I was her caregiver throughout her battle. And there was a lot of things that could have been done better, and there was a lot of things that, a lot of choices and things that could have been done as well. These things were not made known to her or available to her or to us. So how I got involved in this as a profession was I started working with a lot of cancer patients and people asking me for help or to help them basically make better choices during and after treatment. I focus on mostly after treatment simply because there's too much chaos during treatment. And after treatment is really my specialty, where people watched me go from being a very broken, very damaged chemo patient to regaining my health and vitality through basically a lot of trial and error, because there still isn't proper systems out there to help patients recover.
I remember.
And that's how I decided people need to know about this. And also on my literally on my mom's deathbed, she made me promise to use everything I've learned and know to help people recover. So I'm twofold. I'm doing this out of a personal passion. I used to be, when you and I finished school, I went straight into the financial industry. So I really changed industries altogether. And I'm doing this from a personal passion and also keeping a promise to my mother.
It's amazing. Amazing.
Thank you.
And, if you were to list all of your credentials, we'd probably be here for, half a day. But, Riaz has spent years in various aspects of health, with, fitness. He's a fitness trainer. He's won awards as a fitness trainer. I can attest to it. I've done his fitness training, and in other areas. So I really appreciate and respect the kind of vast and diverse knowledge that you have when it comes to health, and that you work with a diverse group of people, right? So, and that's why I wanted to talk to you today and share you with the community around Thermography Clinic. So people who come to our clinic or clinics in our network are people who are either, healthy people who are preventing cancer, people who are, maybe they've been diagnosed and they want to use thermography as a monitoring tool during their therapy, and people who are post and in the recovery phase. So just given that that's sort of the typical vantage of the types of people that come to our clinics, what are some things that you would suggest that people think about, have in mind? What would you advise them, given your knowledge, and also that we didn't say this, but you also work with a reputable hospital here in Toronto. So you've got a real, multi-faceted vantage point. So from all of that, what would you suggest, maybe some 2 or 3 points for people to think about?
Okay, and another thing to add there is that I sit on the Patient Family Advisory Council of that hospital for the Cancer Center. I've been there since 2015, since my mom died. So it's been 8 years. And I'm also part of the OICR, which is the Ontario Institute of Cancer Research. I am a patient member advisory member there.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have a lot of insight into the cancer industry, how it functions here in Canada, specifically in Ontario, but also these are pieces of looking at it, how it functions here in North America. So I'm not going to talk about nutrition or fitness or exercise or mitochondrial health or any of these things. What I think an important message for your listeners to know is that there's multiple ways to handle their cancer, right? During treatment and post-treatment. We are currently in a socio-political system that is really limiting the choices available to patients, right? I think you'll agree with me on this. We are slowly watching the full privatization of our healthcare system here in Ontario.
Yeah.
And if anybody's been paying attention over the last 3 to 4 years, they will see that it's pretty clear as day, right? And part of that means the limitation of resources available to cancer patients. And how I've seen some of this start showing up very early is that people come in with a cancer. I get called by people wanting advice on what to do next. So I also function as a patient navigator and decision support management, which basically means they don't know what to do. They aren't given much choice by the system. And so they don't know what to do for next steps. So I get the data from them, I analyze it, and I give them, these are the options that are available to you. And most people don't know about anything available to them outside of our healthcare system, right? Because they're not told that way. So it's, unfortunately, we're in an environment where if you got cancer, if you've been diagnosed, first of all, you may not even be told you have cancer. You may just get set up with an appointment to the oncologist. I was very surprised to learn back in 2018 that 66% of the patients that show up to the cancer center at this particular hospital have a meeting with an oncologist, have no idea that they have cancer.
Wow.
66%, right? And that's because they aren't told, they are simply made an appointment, right? So the other thing is, if you still have an oncologist, you are still classified as a cancer patient, right?
You mean
so
even
let's-
if they've had an surgery, chemo, etc., and they're post, but if they have an oncologist, they're still considered a cancer patient?
Yeah, and even if they have not been treated, right, which is what I was going to talk about next.
Okay.
People have been showing up with a cancer diagnosis, and they've been told that, okay, well, it's not serious enough for us to treat it right now, so we'll monitor and see how things are, right? And really and truly, what that is not the truth, because what's the best case scenario if you get diagnosed with cancer? You catch it early, you treat it, and you're good, right? That's the best case scenario. So when did this come about? That why are they waiting for it to become serious before you get treated? I'll tell you why. It's the reallocation of resources, right? They want people who can pay for it. They don't want their system to pay for it anymore, right? And this is part of this whole movement to full privatization of our healthcare system. So that's one. So if any of you are ever in a situation where that's what you're being told, get another doctor, get another oncologist, go to another cancer hospital, right? Because basically they're not telling you this, but they're simply saying that we're not going to use the resources we have for you until it's dire enough, right? On the flip side of that, there are people who are being monitored and they're showing up, 8 months later after their initial diagnosis. And then they're being told, well, we've monitored you and you're now at stage 4. And so we don't think there's anything we can do. Get your affairs in order. All right. So what's going on? Right. And nobody's being told there's a lot of things you can do in the meantime to help, fight this disease.
Right.
You and I both know one of the first things to do is you need to look at what's going in your mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You need to look at your life, the food, the water, and your stress levels, because it doesn't matter what disease you get diagnosed with. If your stress level is high, right, you are contributing to your disease. You need to pull that back.
Yeah.
Right. People become, everybody gets scared, everybody gets anxious, everybody gets uncertain. And when they aren't given good information or even full information, they're unsure, right? And they need a direction.
So the first thing people should think about and know about, what you're giving them insight to from your vantage point, is that people should realize that our medical system is in the process of changing, whether we realize it or not. And inside of that shift, people should realize that there's a resource allocation decision making that's kind of a priority versus someone's diagnosis and dealing with their diagnosis immediately. It's first looking at how do we allocate our resources. Resources are minimal and maybe depleting. And so that's something people should know about. And as a result, they're not getting cared for right away and being expected, maybe without them saying so, to go somewhere else and use some private care. So when you say that, is that like they're expecting people to go to a naturopath or go to a homeopath?
Oh, no, they
or not
they
like
won't,
that. No,
they won't
they won't say that, but
they won't say that. They won't even let you know. You see, the thing that a lot of people fail to realize is that we already are in pretty much a privatized system. So the medical care model is a competitive model. Hospitals do compete with each other, right? And they look at anything outside the mainstream medical, alternative care as it's known, right, as a competitor, not complementary, not integrative, but a competitor, right? And the government really is the ones controlling the allocation of medical resources available to us as Canadians here in Ontario, right? And their approach has always been a scarcity approach, right? So this is coming from the top down. This is what's handed down. Now people think about, well, my doctor would never do this to me, but they haven't realized that over the course of probably a couple generations, the doctor is now part of the machine of the healthcare system. They're like cogs in a wheel, and they're like cogs in the machine. And for them to work, as all cogs works, they got to spin in a certain direction. Right. They can't stop spinning, and they can't spin in the other direction. So when people take the approach of, oh, I'm going to bring this to my doctor and see what he says, if it's not spinning in that direction, of course they're going to say no, or they're going to say we don't know about it, or I don't think you should do it. Right?
I see.
Right. And it's not. It's a false premise where people think of their doctors as the doctors are employees of the hospitals. They are employees of the government, right? And they will take the directives that's handed to them, whether they want to or not. Most people, we know this in this society. Most people are compliant. right?
Yeah.
They will follow the directives that they're given, right? Even if they don't agree with it, right? Doctors are known, their hands are tied. This is the resources available to them. So a lot of the ways I explain this is that a lot of the tools in the toolbox, whether it's different forms of chemo, radiation, or pharmaceutical treatment, because those are the main ones used, right? That is now getting narrower. So that toolbox for the oncologist is getting smaller, right? The oncologist is only going to offer you what's in their toolbox. They're not going to offer you the whole toolbox. They don't have access to it, right? So even when it comes down to things like, so several clients I've worked with over the last year, their first chemotherapy, they had a severe anaphylactic reaction to it, right? And the procedure was, okay, we'll pump them full of histamine type medicines, Benadryls, whatnot, right? Wait for them to calm down, and then we'll try it again. Why would you try it again when the patient has already displayed an anaphylactic, right? A death-causing reaction to this medication? Why would you think to lower the dosage and try it again? Because it has nothing to do with the dosage, right? Right? Simply because people think, and and the public has a level of trust, right? But they're not getting the full information, right?
So if someone is in this situation, or they know someone who is a family member or friend, what would you then recommend? So you're saying, okay, pay attention and know this about the system. And then therefore, here are some things that you should consider doing or not doing. What are a couple of things you would suggest?
Well, immediately, so I'll use myself as an example. I'll use my mother as an example. When you get a cancer diagnosis and you go and you meet with the oncologist and they give you the treatment plan and whatnot, you also have to look at, well, what contributed to this? Nobody's ever going to really tell you, what caused your cancer, right? Unless it's something pretty obvious, like you're a heavy smoker and you have lung cancer. Well, there's the connection, right? Or you work in construction and you unfortunately had to work with asbestos, right? These are things where they'll make that direct connection. But for most people, they won't. We don't know the exact reason of why you got a cancer diagnosis, right?
Yeah.
One of the common things they'll say for people with breast cancer is, oh, maybe it's hereditary. Do you have it in your family? Right. And as I said to one client recently, when she said, oh, she has cancer in her family, because her brother had esophageal cancer, her father had prostate cancer, and her mother had a type of carcinoma, and she has breast cancer. And I says, you don't have cancer in your family. Your family experienced cancer, but cancer does not run in your family.
Yes.
Right. My own example, right? To give you a contrasting perspective. My father is 1 out of 10. He has 8 brothers and 1 sister, right? My father is 89 years old. Now, in his late 60s, him and all his brothers had a bout with prostate cancer. They all survived it, but they all had a bout with prostate cancer. All my male cousins on my father's side who are above 55 years old have had their bout with prostate cancer. So does cancer run in my family? Probably. Right?
Okay.
Same cancer affecting a specific demographic. So yes, there's probably a prostate cancer gene or something in my family. So it would behoove me to pay attention to that and maybe take steps so that that doesn't occur to me, or at least should it happen, I'm aware of the possibility and take steps to, one, do as much prevention work as I can, and 2, understand that, well, I just said that they all did. So we're talking about 16 people in my family, males in my family on my father's side, who had prostate cancer. Good thing they're all alive.
Thank God.
So
So you're saying there's a difference between cancer running in the family versus some people in the family experiencing cancer. There's a
yes,
difference.
yes,
Okay.
right. But a common answer given to everybody, if there's no screaming obvious determinant of your cancer, is that it runs in your family,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's a little bit of misinformation, but it's just something to move on from that.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of research that shows that in breast cancer, anyhow, less than 5% is genetic.
Mhm,
So more than 95% is attributed to other things like in the environment and our food and our stress levels, like you mentioned before.
mhm.
So I guess, so what I'm hearing from you is that people should be aware of what's happening in the system. And if they or someone that they know and love is dealing with a diagnosis, they should go and see what the oncologist has to offer, but be
Yes,
aware that their toolbox is very limited. Maybe the toolbox is this
exactly.
big, but they only have this much available.
Mhm.
That's number one. Number two is that there's a kind of a competitiveness happening in our system, meaning that if you are not happy with what you hear from one doctor in one hospital, go to another hospital, maybe search around, talk to friends, talk to family, find out what other people know. But basically, there's a bit of like a shopping around, even from hospital to hospital. We shouldn't
Yeah,
assume.
and you're not gonna hear it from the institution itself. It'd be like
Right.
if you walked into one of the banks to buy their mutual funds for your retirement account, and they only offered you these three funds and said that's it. If you ask them, well, if I go to another bank, are they gonna have a different choice? They're gonna say no.
They're not going to, of course, they're not trying to sell
They're
someone
not going to
else's.
encourage you to go and check with their competitors,
Yes.
right? And our healthcare system is the same,
Okay.
right?
Well,
We
yeah,
right.
that's
Um,
news. That's news. And then the other thing that I'm hearing you say is that there's a difference between, cancer in my family versus people in my family experiencing cancer. So
mhm.
people should know what the difference is and don't be so afraid. Even if you fall in one or the other categories, if you know that it's something that runs in the family, take some actions to be preventive, maybe get some early screening,
Mhm.
or watch the diet or do different things, learn up about what to do from a prevention perspective. Or if you're in the camp of different people in my family have experienced it, again, don't be afraid. Just realize it's something it could be environmental, it could be food, it could be a number of related to
It
a
could
number
be
of
a number
things.
of it could be a number of factors. Yeah.
Yes, and not to be, and I hear you saying, let's just don't be so afraid, because the system, our medical system tends to, I can't say every doctor's like this, but tends to have a kind of a fear-based approach, so to speak.
It is absolutely a fear-based
Yeah.
approach, and this goes into when you've already gone through treatment and you're in remission, right? Um, People need to understand as well that in order to, and this is with the area that I specialize in order
Yes.
to remain in remission, right? I have a program called the Road to Survivorship, right? Where I've identified 10 things that all survivors do. And to be a survivor means you have no recurrence for a 10-year mark,
Mhm.
right? I hear people saying that, oh, I'm a survivor and they finished treatment last year. Not quite. You're in remission, which is great. But in order for you to stay there and regenerate your body
Mhm.
into a non-cancerous body, that takes some time,
Mhm.
right? You
Good
survived your
note. Good
treatment.
point.
You survived your treatment. Let's learn to survive cancer,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, and absolutely. One of the things I said earlier was you need to take a look at what's going in your mouth,
Right.
right? And I'll give you the scientific reason for that very, very simply, right? Cancer is a living entity. And like all living entities, it has a genetic component, a signaling component, and a metabolic component, Modern oncology focuses on the genetic component, which is why they will usually give you the reasoning that maybe you got cancer, maybe it runs in the family,
Right.
right? Chemotherapy, immunotherapy, all these pharmaceutical ways of approaching it is to deal with the genetic component. The signaling component, the genetic component is basically how the cells reproduce themselves, right?
Yeah.
The signaling component is how cancer communicates with other cells, right? Every living entity communicates in some form or fashion. When you are healthy and you do have healthy cells, right? If you aren't monitoring yourself properly, you can give cancer the opportunity to communicate with your healthy cells and, you know, for lack of a better way of saying it, recruit them become cancer cells, right? And metabolically, everything that is alive needs to feed itself,
Yes.
right? So signaling and metabolic components, modern oncology does not address these. So this is what we can do as people. We can address, you know, what feeds cancer, what feeds a different type of cancers, and you know, I'm not going to get into the sugars and the glutamines and
Yeah.
everything else,
But I
but
think this is a really good place to kind of wrap this up and say, you know, because people should be empowered based on what you're saying. They should know that there's a shift in our system. Be aware of that. Don't be afraid. There are things that you can do. And I know that Riaz hasn't said this, but I'm saying this. I'm going to put Riaz's contact in the below this video. And I encourage people to, you know, reach out to Riaz if you're in a situation yourself, or if you know someone who is, and consider having him as the person to guide you through during and post any kind of treatments, because this is someone who is very dedicated and committed and loving and very diligent. So I can tell you that. Riaz, this has been great. I think you've enlightened me. And I think that you will have enlightened a lot of people listening to this. Thank you for today. Thank you for everything that you do.
you're welcome. And thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Love it. All right. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.